Hello and welcome to PalaceFanTV for our December review video here at the Victory Club in Norwood. I'm Jim Daly and I've got with me, of course, Jay Crame from the Eagles Beak and Terence Ford from RinBlueArmy.com. Happy New Year, lads.
And to you, Jim. New Year.
How was your Christmas?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah?
Been doing my best Santa impression growing
Very good, yeah. Well, it paid off. Next year it's going to be fantastic. It was a busy period for Palace in December and one game in January, the Chelsea game. We're going to include that as well. So a lot of games to get through. But my first question to you guys is, we've got more points away from home, but arguably those results were potentially lucky. The Stoke game, Everton game and the Bournemouth game. Are teams starting to work out Palace's away form now, Terence?
Everton was a weird game. I felt we could have nicked it several times on the break, but the amount of times they hit the woodwork, we could have easily been 3 or 4 down very quickly. Have teams figured us out? We've been toying around with a lot of injuries here and there in those games and suspensions and so on, so I don't think it's a case of figuring us out. I think it's more exposed our squad depth as opposed to actually saying teams have figured us out.
What do you think about that, Jay?
Yeah, I think probably January transfer window has come at the right time for us. Terence mentioned the injuries we've had, and I think we've looked a bit lacklustre in some of the games as well. Every team's had the same amount of games, but we've particularly looked a little bit lost in some of the games, and we've had some blow-par performances in those as well. But away from home, yeah, I think we've missed a bit of pace here and there. The Everton game was a weird one. We scored, and we could have actually, after they equalised, we could have won it, late on as well. So I think that game in particular was weird. The Stoke one, Stoke are a good side. I think they've beaten the teams around them, the big teams, Liverpool, Man United, and then they lose at home to us. So it's a kind of result we'd do at home, really. But I think that was a particularly good result actually away from home. I know we nicked it late on, but yeah.
Well, I think Stoke we were particularly resilient is the word I'm looking for at the back. It was kind of more old Palace because Stoke really turned it on at points. But where they fell short, Stoke, was that midfield trio of Arnautovic and Shaqiri and Bojan didn't want to track back past the 75th minute. So once it got to that stage, I always thought that we might nick something on the break, but it did take a brilliant performance on our defence and notably Wayne Hennessy as well to actually set up that win.
Is Hennessy Palace's number one now? Because we've had this debate every month about goalkeepers. The Everton game made that fantastic save from Cleverley. Is he now our established number one for you, Jay?
Yeah, no doubt. He's made it. He's made the shirt his own this month. Some great saves. He's saved us some points, this month. So yeah, he's taken it with both hands. Well,
quite rightly, he is a goalkeeper. Yeah. So, slight worry about the goals that we're scoring. So we only scored 4 goals in this period. 2 of them are from set pieces. One of them is an absolute worldie from Chung Yong Lee. Is this a worry for the team, Terence?
I would say yes. Alan Pardew said it after the Chelsea game and before the Chelsea game, we need a striker. Obviously, taking Balassi, Kabaya and Wickham out of our team is going to cause problems in that sense. Bamford's been a non-entity since he's been here. Dwight Gale's obviously injured. Marouane Chamakh, I don't count as a centre forward, so we've had to play Fraser Campbell up front and he's barely a centre forward. So yeah, it is a worry, but I think it's something that we're going to address in this window, and hopefully it will be a top-class striker.
Yeah, okay. Well, we will be doing a transfer review and preview videos, I'm sure, on PalaceFanTV. We mentioned Stoke, which came after a fantastic home win against Southampton. Now, those are 2 teams that when Palace got promoted a couple of years ago, certainly would have looked to emulate on and off the pitch. We've beaten them both in December. Does it feel that maybe we're at their level already, Jay?
I think so. I think it's we wanted to push on from last season, and the transfers we made in the summer, I think, alluded to the fact that the club wanted to push on. Pardew wanted to push on, the owners as well. We made the signings, and I think we're all looking to push on from that 10th place finish last year, and challenge the likes of Stoke and Southampton. They've been great the last couple of years. I'd also throw Swansea into the mix, although they're having a terrible season this season. But the last couple of seasons they've been, very similar in that we could have looked to them to be, kind of something we want to be going forward, but obviously not this season. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Southampton game was a great result for us. They've been a bit odd this last few weeks. They've kind of won games and then gone and lost the next one. So and obviously going to face them in the cup as well. So that'd be an interesting one.
So Southampton game, arguably our best performance, do you think, for the December period?
Yeah, I thought we were pretty dominant in that game. Created some really, really good chances. I thought Balassi was excellent. I thought Connor Wickham was excellent. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we still had Wayne Hennessy to thank for one particularly world-class save, the header from Davis. So yeah, I thought we were really good in that game, and it's just a shame that then we moved on to Stoke and then got injuries.
Yeah. Just staying with Southampton, Balassi figured out how to cross the ball. Southampton, he was just putting in cross after cross, wasn't he? Right in the box. Is that a little bit on his game, and he's starting to add to it?
Well, I said after the Chelsea game, if Balassi and Zaha could cross like Willian does, we'd probably win the league, because he seemed to pick out the striker every time. Now, I don't know how much of that has to do with Diego Costa, but it's always been the problem with our wingers, is the consistency of the end product. And with Balassi, it's probably getting down on a more frequent basis than it is with Zaha at the moment. But again, I must stress it's to do with Balassi. Every time Balassi's played, he's pretty much got Wickham to aim at. Zaha has been aiming at Campbell in the last few weeks, so it's hard to really take his crosses for gospel at the moment.
Yeah, and you alluded to those injuries. Last few games, Bournemouth and Swansea, and then of course Chelsea as well, which we'll come on to. No goals for Palace. Without Connor, without Yannick, does it kind of shine a light on the fact that maybe our squad isn't quite as deep or as much quality in depth as we previously thought maybe?
I think my frustration is that you get players who are sitting on the sidelines waiting for a chance to get on the pitch or take a place for somebody, and they don't take it. I know sometimes it's difficult in little spells of 10 minutes as a sub or so, but any longer than that, you'd think a player would want to come on and prove themselves to be a first choice player rather than just sitting on the bench and taking the money. I think you're right, it does show that we perhaps need to strengthen our options, bring in a couple of players who are going to be starters, and that means a couple of first team players now at the moment will drop down to the bench and strengthen that bench.
Yeah, I think there's an element of Pardew's got to take a little bit of responsibility as well for. He's very rigid in his setup, and he wants to play that way all of the time. With the depth that we have, that we were raving about at the beginning of the season, the back end of last season, it's now we have European aspirations. The depth doesn't look so great, because he's putting in the likes of Joe Ledley and Mile Jednak and asking them to play like Johan Kabaya, which they cannot do. It's the same with Lee coming in and saying you've got to play like Balassi, or sticking Puncheon out wide and say you've got to play like Balassi. Instead of altering our style to suit those players and put round pegs in round holes, he's putting square pegs in round holes, if that makes sense. Every time on the weekend against Chelsea, I keep jumping in because it's obviously fresh in the mind, the goalkeeper passed the ball to Dan or Delaney, who then usually are passing into Kabay or MacArthur. This time they're passing to Jedinak or MacArthur, and it's very, very different, and Chelsea picked up on that and swarmed all over it. So Pardew needs to, with the depth we have currently, needs to alter the style slightly to suit those players when they come on, because they are not the class of Kabay.
You mentioned Puncheon there, and he has been in the last few games moved out wide rather than in the middle, and for me he looks a little bit lost out there, Jay. Do you think we're sort of now and then he gets a good ball in, as he did against Chelsea, but do you think we're sort of losing something about Puncheon by playing him out wide?
I don't think I'm alone in pulling my hair out watching Puncheon. I know why he's in the team. If he carries on like he is, I won't have much at the end of the season. Everyone says about the second half of the season he's better, but we're waiting for it. I know we're into the new year, but Puncheon is one of those frustrating players. We know what he can do. He showed it to us last season, and we so want that to happen again. Maybe the pressure's there on him. He's trying too hard, perhaps. I don't know. But he's not a wide player for me. He really isn't. I'd rather him be either number 10 role or similar to Kabay, having a bit of freedom in the middle to do what he can do. What we expect him to do with the ball, really.
A victim of injuries potentially, then.
Yeah. But Puncheon, 1 goal before January in his Palace career. 12 goals after December. So he'll turn good. He's done it every year now. Once is a fluke, 2 seasons running is a trend for me. So the goals will come, I think.
Going back to what you just said about the squad and the depth, we were raving about at the start of the season, the depth, but exactly the point that Terence made is that we have a depth but not the players for those roles. We don't have another Connor Wickham, and we saw that against Chelsea. I touched on Chelsea again, the fact that Campbell was coming back to close down and win the ball back, but there's nobody to hold the ball up when he was coming back. Wickham was there to bring on our midfielders, and that's how we've played. But like I say, change of formation perhaps, or even just changes in January transfer window to bring players in that would fit that formation more than the ones we got.
We have seen that change of formation a little bit, haven't we? In the previous month, home to Newcastle, for example, we sort of went to almost a fluid 4-4-2. So he will now and then, won't he? But
oh no, totally. I think it's he started the game against Chelsea with a 4-4-1-1. Really, we had Zaha kind of up alongside Campbell, but it still all sort of moulds into the same formation really, and it still sticks with. You're still relying on that centre midfielder to do something different. I think we have plenty of with Zaha and Balassi being the way they are, and Puncheon, they can all flip between left, right wing and playing in the middle. So there's always going to be a bit of fluidity there, but it's just having that replacement for Cabaye, if Cabaye's not there, is where you would need to change the whole structure of everything to more suit Jednak being in his preferred sitting on the back four, and then everyone else sitting a little bit deeper, and then using the pace even more to the extent instead of actually trying to pass through teams.
But unfortunately, that Cabaye replacement will probably cost you another 10-15 million pounds again. But maybe that's the sort of transfers that if Palace do really want to solidify or build on this.
How many US dollars is that?
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But do you think we'll see signings of that quality in January, Jay?
Tough one. I mean, Cabaye, I mean, we've always enjoyed watching Jednak and how he's played for us. I mean, we finished 10th with Jednak in the midfield last season, and we've had such an upgrade, and we've seen what Cabaye can do, and now we've seen Jednak come in to replace him, and it's not what we want to see.
I thought he had a good game against Swansea. I did think
he did actually, yeah, but the passing is still...
Yeah,
you know,
I feel really, really bad specifically picking out Ledley and Jednak for basically not being good enough anymore, because they've been, well, Jednak especially has been a great servant for us, but we have moved on a notch, and the difference between 10th place and 5th place is huge in terms of class. So we are going to need to bring players in, and I'm pretty sure that the centre midfield role will be one that will be addressed in this window.
Okay, well, we touched on Chelsea a few times. 3-0 defeat on the first game of 2016. Not the way we want to kick off 2016. Was it a bad day at the office, Terence, and one we can just sort of put down to them being good, us not being that good, or was there something more to it?
I think a lot of it was timing. We was talking about this before. Three weeks earlier, 3 weeks later, we probably beat them. You look at injuries being in the Bournemouth game and the Swansea games, 0-0 against teams that you'd want to be beating. The signs were there. And then there was the first time Gus Hiddink had a 6-day gap to actually work with the players, where when he came in before it was game, off day, game. Then he had a period to actually instill some ideas into them. So it was kind of a perfect storm really for Chelsea to get that result. But the first goal was always going to win that game, and in the first 25 minutes we could have easily got that first goal, but they got the first goal, heads went up, and then they were confident, and looks like Chelsea of old in the second half.
Why is it clubs seem to keep sacking and replacing managers before they play Palace? It's so frustrating. Swansea did it as well, Chelsea. So frustrating, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That's the first time I think Chelsea players have actually looked as you expect them to look, this season. They're not a rubbish side, contrary to what people were saying, in the build up to the game. Obviously, the season so far, they have great players, and they showed it on the weekend. But I think the 3-0 scoreline perhaps flattered them a little bit. Like Terence said, we put them under pressure to start with, and if we'd have got that first goal, could have been a different game entirely. But we had a few players off their game, I think.
A bit disappointing in the fact, before the game we had the least amount of minutes being behind in a game, and we went behind, and it was the first time this season that Palace players sort of heads dropped instantly, didn't it? A bit disappointing in that for you?
Yeah, it was. I think perhaps with the players we have, I'm not going back to injuries or making excuses, because they beat us fairly. But I think when you look at the options on the pitch and what we've had, or what we've had before that game up until then, maybe the thought and the amount of games we've had up till that point, I don't know. It was disappointing to see that the heads dropped. Delaney couldn't cut that ball out. If he'd have cut it out or predicted it a bit better than he did, it could have been different. But he hadn't long been booked by that point, had he? So
it's really difficult though when you're playing against 12 men.
Well, it's a fair point. It was not, from Palace point of view, not a fantastic performance, was it? Well, not a consistent performance, was it, Terence, from Kevin Friend?
No, it was. It's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating that a referee will book Damien Delaney for his first challenge, but then let Joe John Obi Mikel,
the
not
one,
Joby
yeah.
McAnuff, that's a different player.
Yeah.
Putting in that foul on Joel Wall, which is a yellow card in anyone's book, and then he leaves one a bit high on McCarthy a few minutes later. After the one on Joel Wall, he spoke to him for a good 10-15 seconds, called the captain over. What have you said to him? Like, surely it must be one more and I'm going to book you. But then 5 minutes later he does the same thing and he doesn't book him. And Chelsea outfouled us in the game and didn't get one booking. Don't get me wrong, I think all of our bookings were nailed on bookings. All 3 of them were bookings. But Chelsea should have had 4 or 5 bookings as well. So it's just the consistency that drives us mad. Did it change the result? Maybe. Booking Damo for his first foul means he can't get as physical as he would have liked with Costa, like he did so well at Stamford Bridge. If he gets a bit more physical with him in this game, maybe he doesn't have such a good game, Diego Costa. But hey.
There you go. Well, not a fantastic note to end this video on, but never mind. Thank you to the chaps for joining me. Comment below with your thoughts. Do you agree with the guys on their thoughts on December? Don't forget you can subscribe for all these videos and lots more. Drop a like if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Snapchat as well. And we'll see you again soon. Cheers.